What happens when country music royalty sits down with one of daytime television's most outspoken hosts? And the conversation takes a turn nobody saw coming. Today, we're diving into the explosive confrontation that had viewers at home picking sides and social media buzzing for weeks. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below with your thoughts. The View's studio was filled with its usual energy as the cameras rolled for what everyone expected to be a routine celebrity interview. Reba McEntire, the queen of country music herself, had come on the show to promote her latest album and talk about her recent ventures. She sat poised in the guest chair, her signature red hair perfectly styled, wearing an elegant black blazer that commanded respect. Joy Behar, known for her sharp wit and never backing down from controversy, leaned forward with that familiar glint in her eye that regular viewers know means she's about to stir the pot. The other hosts, Whoopi Goldberg, Sarah Haynes, Sunny Hostin, and Alyssa Farah Griffin, looked on curiously. "So, Reba," Joy began with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You've been in the entertainment business for decades. You've seen how much the industry has changed. What do you think about all these young artists today who seem more focused on their social media followers than actual talent?" Reba shifted slightly in her chair, her smile remaining diplomatic, but her eyes sharpening just a touch. "Well, Joy, I think every generation has its own way of connecting with audiences. These young artists are incredibly talented. They're just using different tools than we had back in my day. But don't you think," Joy pressed on, clearly not satisfied with the diplomatic answer, "that social media has cheapened the art form? I mean, anyone with a phone can call themselves a musician now. Back in your era, you actually had to have real talent to make it." The temperature in the studio seemed to drop a few degrees. Whoopi glanced at Joy with a look that said, "Careful now," but Joy was already in full swing. Reba's voice remained steady, but there was steel underneath the velvet. "Joy, I have to respectfully disagree with you there. Talent is talent regardless of the platform. Some of the most gifted artists I know started by posting videos online. The tools change, but the heart and soul of music, that never changes." "Come on, Reba," Joy said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "You can't seriously tell me that some kid lip-syncing on TikTok has the same artistic value as what you built your career on. There's a difference between entertainment and art." Now, the other hosts were looking uncomfortable. Sarah cleared her throat softly, trying to redirect, but Reba held up a gentle hand. "Joy, I'm curious," Reba said, her southern accent becoming more pronounced, as it often did when she was getting worked up. "Because last I checked, you were a comedian before you became a talk show host. And comedy, like music, comes in all different forms." The audience let out a collective ooh, and you could see Joy's back stiffen. This wasn't going the way she expected. "Well, I never claimed to be an authority," Joy shot back. But her voice had an edge now. "I'm just saying there's a difference between paying your dues and getting handed success because you went viral." "Paying your dues," Reba repeated. And now, her voice carried that unmistakable tone that anyone from Oklahoma would recognize as trouble brewing. "Joy, honey, let me tell you about paying dues. I started singing in honky-donk bars when I was 16 years old, getting paid $20 a night if I was lucky. I drove thousands of miles in a beat-up car, sleeping in truck stops, performing for crowds that sometimes numbered in the single digits. So when you talk about paying dues, I think I might know a thing or two about that." Joy wasn't backing down. "I'm not questioning your dues, Reba. I'm talking about these new artists who get millions of followers overnight and suddenly think they're musicians. And I'm telling you, that's not how it works," Reba fired back, her composure cracking just slightly. "You don't just wake up with millions of followers. Those kids you're talking about, they're working 18-hour days creating content, engaging with fans, writing songs, learning instruments, and yes, performing. Just because it looks easy to you doesn't mean it is." Whoopi tried to jump in. "Maybe we should." "No, Whoopi. Let me finish," Reba said firmly, her eyes never leaving Joy's face. "I've been in this business for over 40 years, and I've learned that respect goes both ways. I respect every artist who puts their heart and soul into their work, whether they're performing at the Grand Ole Opry or in their bedroom for a phone camera." Joy leaned back in her chair, clearly realizing she might have poked the wrong bear, but her pride wouldn't let her retreat. "I'm just saying there's something to be said for the traditional path, for working with record labels, for having professionals guide your career." "Traditional path?" Reba's laugh had no humor in it. "Joy, the traditional path you're talking about nearly killed my career 3 times. Record executives who told me I was too country for pop and too pop for country. Producers who wanted to change everything about me, from my sound, to my look, to my name. The traditional path you're romanticizing is the same path that kept countless talented artists from ever being heard. The studio audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. The camera operators were getting shots they never expected, and the producers in the control room were probably having heart attacks and celebrating at the same time. These young artists you're dismissing, Reba continued, her voice growing stronger. They're doing something we never could. They're taking control of their own destiny. They're writing their own songs, producing their own music, building their own fan base, and doing it all without asking permission from some executive in a suit who's never held a guitar in his life. Joy's face was flushed now. But quality control, Reba, doesn't quality control matter anymore? Quality control? Reba stood up from her chair, something that never happens during a View interview. The other hosts looked like they wanted to disappear into their seats. Joy, are you seriously suggesting that the music industry's quality control has been working? Because I can name about 100 terrible songs that got radio play simply because some executive thought they'd sell. And I can name 1,000 amazing songs that never saw the light of day because they didn't fit some formula. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Joy was clearly scrambling now, realizing this conversation had gotten away from her completely. I think, Joy said, trying to regain some composure. We might be talking about two different things here. No, Reba said firmly, still standing. We're talking about the same thing. We're talking about respect. Respect for artists, respect for hard work, and respect for the fact that music, real music, comes from the heart, not from some predetermined path that you think everyone should follow. The camera caught Joy opening and closing her mouth like a fish out of water, clearly not used to being on the receiving end of such a passionate response. But what happened next would shock everyone in that studio, including Reba herself. Joy suddenly slammed her hand on the table, the sound echoing through the studio like a gunshot. You know what, Reba? Maybe the problem isn't with young artists. Maybe the problem is with established artists who can't handle honest criticism. The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Every person in that studio, from the camera operators to the audience members, seemed to stop breathing. Reba's eyes went wide, not with hurt, but with the kind of fury that comes when someone crosses a line they didn't even know existed. Excuse me? Reba's voice was dangerously quiet now. The kind of quiet that comes before a tornado touches down. Are you suggesting that I can't handle criticism? Well, Joy said, clearly doubling down despite the warning signs flashing all around her. You seem pretty defensive about a simple observation about the music industry. Whoopi was frantically trying to signal to the producers. But Reba held up her hand again, this time with the authority of someone who had commanded stages in front of 50,000 people. Simple observation, Reba repeated, her voice getting louder with each word. Joy, you just spent the last 5 minutes insulting an entire generation of artists, dismissing their hard work and questioning their talent. And when I defend them, you tell me I can't handle criticism. Let me tell you something about criticism, honey. The honey came out like a weapon, dripping with sarcasm and barely contained rage. I've been criticized by better people than you, Reba continued, now pacing behind her chair like a caged lioness. I've been criticized by music critics who actually understand music. I've been criticized by fans who love me enough to want me to be better. I've been criticized by my peers who respect the craft enough to give honest feedback. But what you're doing isn't criticism, Joy. What you're doing is looking down your nose at people whose boots you're not worthy to clean. The audience gasped audibly. This was television gold, and everyone knew it. Joy's face went from red to purple. How dare you? How dare I? Reba interrupted, her Oklahoma accent now thick as molasses. How dare I what? Tell the truth? How dare I call out someone who thinks she can sit in judgment of artists who've worked their entire lives to perfect their craft? You want to know what takes real talent, Joy? Sitting behind that desk every day making jokes about people you've never met, criticizing industries you've never worked in, passing judgment on art forms you clearly don't understand. Sarah Haynes looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Sunny Hostin was staring with her mouth slightly open. Alyssa was taking notes like this was a masterclass in confrontation. But Whoopi, seasoned professional that she was, knew this was beyond her ability to control. Ladies, Whoopi tried weakly. But Joy was having none of it. You think you're so high and mighty, Joy spat, standing up to match Reba's energy. Just because you've sold some records and worn some cowboy boots. Well, let me tell you something, country music princess. Some of us have been fighting real battles while you've been singing pretty songs. The silence that followed was deafening. If you listened closely, you could probably hear hearts beating in the control room. Reba stood perfectly still for about 3 seconds, and then something shifted in her expression. The anger was still there, but now it was mixed with something else, something colder, something more dangerous. Real battles, Reba's voice was now eerily calm, which somehow made it more terrifying than when she was shouting. Real battles, Joy? You want to talk about real battles? Let me tell you about real battles. She walked closer to the host table, and Joy actually took a step back. I fought the battle of being told I wasn't pretty enough for country music. I fought the battle of being told I was too old to start over after my divorce. I fought the battle of losing 8 members of my band in a plane crash and having to find the strength to get back on stage 3 months later. I fought the battle of being a single mother in an industry that chews up women and spits them out. I fought the battle of starting my own record label when everyone said I was crazy. I fought the battle of proving that a middle-aged woman could still sell out arenas when everyone said my time was up. With each battle she listed, Reba's voice grew stronger, more powerful. The studio felt like it was shrinking around them. And you know what the biggest battle was, Joy? It was fighting people exactly like you. People who think they know better. People who think success should come with an apology. People who think that because they have a microphone, they have the right to tear down what others have built. Joy opened her mouth to respond. But Reba wasn't finished. You sit there in your comfortable chair, drawing your comfortable salary, making your comfortable jokes. And you have the audacity to tell me and an entire generation of hardworking artists that we don't meet your standards. Your standards, Joy. What exactly are your qualifications to judge the music industry? What songs have you written? What instruments do you play? What stages have you commanded? What records have you sold? I don't need to be a musician to have an opinion, Joy shot back. But her voice lacked the conviction it had earlier. Opinion? Reba laughed. And it wasn't a pleasant sound. Calling someone's life work worthless isn't an opinion, Joy. It's an insult. And when you insult people I care about, people I've mentored, people I've watched poured their hearts and souls into their music, you better believe I'm going to have something to say about it. The camera was getting close-ups of both women now. Joy looked flustered, out of her depth, like someone who had started a fight she couldn't finish. Reba looked like a force of nature, controlled fury wrapped in designer clothing. And another thing, Reba continued, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at Joy. Don't you ever call me princess again. I've earned every single thing I have in this life. I've earned the right to be called by my name with respect, just like every other guest who sits in that chair. The fact that you think you can diminish me with cute little nicknames tells me everything I need to know about your character. Whoopi finally found her voice. Reba, maybe we should take a breath here. No, Whoopi, Reba said firmly but respectfully. I'm not done because this isn't just about me anymore. This is about every artist who's ever been dismissed by someone who thinks they're better than them. This is about every young person who's been told their dreams don't matter because and I'll be damned if I'm going to sit here and let anyone, I don't care who they are or what show they're on, disrespect the music industry that gave me everything. Joy was clearly scrambling now. Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. Reba's eyebrows shot up so high they nearly disappeared into her hairline. Joy, honey, we didn't get off on the wrong foot. You deliberately tried to start an argument with someone you thought would just sit there and take it. Well, surprise. I'm not that person. I never have been that person. And I'm certainly not going to start being that person today on national television, in front of millions of people who deserve better than watching you try to tear down their heroes. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Joy Behar, for perhaps the first time in her television career, appeared to be completely speechless. Her mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. The other hosts looked like they were watching a car crash in slow motion, unable to look away, but terrified of what might happen next. Then something unexpected happened. Joy's shoulders sagged slightly, and when she spoke, her voice was quieter, less combative. You're right. The words were so soft that the boom operators had to scramble to make sure they were picked up clearly. Reba, who had been prepared for another round of battle, actually blinked in surprise. I'm sorry, Reba said, clearly not having expected this turn. You're right, Joy repeated, louder this time. I did come into this thinking I could score some easy points, make some jokes at the expense of country music and young artists. I thought you'd just laugh it off, and we'd move on to talking about your album. The studio was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. The audience members were leaning forward in their seats, afraid to miss a single word. But you didn't laugh it off, Joy continued, looking directly at Reba now. And you shouldn't have, because what I was doing wasn't criticism. It was exactly what you said it was. It was looking down my nose at people whose work I don't understand. Reba slowly sat back down in her chair, her posture still alert but no longer aggressive. Joy, I know. Let me finish, Joy said, holding up her hand. I've spent so many years being the person who speaks truth to power, who calls out hypocrisy, who fights for the underdog that I forgot I was becoming the thing I used to fight against. I became someone who punches down instead of punching up. Whoopi was staring at Joy like she'd never seen her before. This level of public self-reflection was not something Joy Behar was known for. I don't know anything about the music industry, Joy admitted. I don't know what it takes to write a song or build a following or pour your heart out night after night on stage. I was talking about things I don't understand, and worse, I was dismissing the hard work of people I've never even met. Reba's expression had softened considerably. The fire was still there, but it was banked now. Controlled. Joy. Everyone's entitled to their opinions about music. That's not what this was about. Yes, it was, Joy said firmly. It was exactly what this was about. It was about respect. And I disrespected you. I disrespected young artists. And I disrespected everyone watching at home who loves those artists. That's not opinion. That's just being mean-spirited. Sarah N looked like she might cry with relief. The tension that had been suffocating the studio was finally starting to lift. You know what the crazy thing is? Joy continued, a rueful smile starting to appear on her face. My own daughter is a huge fan of some of these young artists I was criticizing. She's constantly showing me videos of kids who taught themselves to play guitar by watching YouTube, or singer-songwriters who built massive followings by being authentic and vulnerable online. And every time she shows me these videos, I think, wow, that's incredible. But then I get on television, and suddenly I'm the old person complaining about kids these days. Reba actually smiled at that. The first genuine smile she'd shown since the conversation started. Joy, there's nothing wrong with being skeptical of change. We all do it. But there's a difference between being skeptical and being dismissive. And I crossed that line, Joy acknowledged. Multiple lines, actually. The princess comment was completely out of line. You're a legend and you deserve to be treated with respect, especially on this show. Reba leaned forward slightly. You know what, Joy? I think I may have gotten a little carried away myself. I could have made my point without getting quite so heated. Are you kidding me? Joy laughed, and this time it was genuine. You were magnificent. I haven't been put in my place that thoroughly since my mother caught me lying about doing my homework in 3rd grade. And just like then, I deserved every word of it. The audience, who had been holding their breath for the past several minutes, finally started to relax. Some were even smiling now. But here's what I want to know, Joy said, settling back into her chair with renewed energy. Tell me about these young artists. Help me understand what I'm missing because clearly I am missing something important. Reba's whole demeanor changed. The defensive anger was completely gone now, replaced by the passion that had made her a star in the first place. Oh Joy, where do I even start? There's this young woman. She's probably 19, 20 years old, and she writes these incredible songs about mental health and growing up in small-town America. She plays guitar, piano, writes all her own music, and she's built this community of fans who support each other through her comment sections. She's probably helped more people deal with anxiety and depression than half the therapists in this country. Really? Joy asked, and you could tell she was genuinely interested. Now really, Reba confirmed. And there's this kid, he can't be more than 17, who does these amazing acoustic covers of classic country songs. But he puts his own spin on them. He's introduced an entire generation of kids to Hank Williams and Patsy Cline. He's doing more for preserving traditional country music than most of Nashville combined. Joy was nodding now, completely engaged. That actually sounds incredible. It is incredible, Reba said, her voice warming with enthusiasm. These kids aren't trying to replace traditional country music. They're building on it. They're taking the best parts of what we did and adding their own experiences, their own perspectives. That's not killing the industry. That's keeping it alive. Sunny finally found her voice. This is actually a beautiful conversation now. It is, Whoopi agreed. This is what The View is supposed to be about, having real discussions, even when we disagree. Joy turned to face the camera directly. You know what, folks at home? I learned something today. I learned that when you dismiss someone's art, you're not just criticizing their work. You're dismissing their story, their struggle, their dreams. And that's not something anyone has the right to do, especially not me. Reba nodded approvingly. And I learned that sometimes the best way to change someone's mind isn't to fight them. It's to help them see what they're missing. Though the fighting was pretty spectacular, too. Alyssa chimed in, getting laughs from everyone, including Reba and Joy. It was, Joy agreed, grinning now. I haven't been in a verbal sparring match like that in years. Reba, you would make an excellent talk show host. Thanks, but I think I'll stick to singing, Reba laughed. Though, if you ever need someone to fill in when you're on vacation, I'm apparently pretty good at telling people exactly what I think. But next time, can you go a little easier on me? My ego is pretty fragile. The studio erupted in laughter. The tension completely dissolved now. What had started as a hostile confrontation had somehow transformed into a master class in how to have a real conversation about difficult topics. Whoopi looked at the clock and realized they were almost out of time. Ladies, this has been absolutely incredible television. Reba, thank you for not backing down. And Joy, thank you for being big enough to admit when you were wrong. Thank you for having me, Reba said graciously. And Joy, I hope you'll keep that promise to check out some of these young artists. I think you'll be surprised by what you find. I will, Joy promised. And Reba, I hope you'll forgive a stubborn old talk show host who learned something important today. Already forgiven. The two women could be seen talking animatedly, with Joy taking notes on her phone as Reba recommended specific artists and songs. What had started as one of the most explosive confrontations in View history had ended with mutual respect and understanding. So what do you think? Did Joy Behar deserve the verbal beatdown that Reba McEntire delivered? Or did they both handle the situation perfectly by the end? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories like this one. Which moment from this confrontation surprised you the most?